Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today, I have a new friend I'm introducing you to, Shannon Villalba. She's a serial entrepreneur, an attorney, and a holistic practitioner. She's the founder of Villalba Law Firm, which is a law firm practicing holistic business and legal strategies. I think this is an interesting combination. I cannot wait to hear more about it. Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Shauna, for having me.
I'd love to get these conversations started with a quick little intro. So if you wouldn't mind, tell my audience a little bit about you and your business, and specifically how you've embraced this idea of starting again.
Sure. I'm Shannon Villalba, as you know, and I was a commercial artist before I was a lawyer. So all of my training
Okay.
has been I was theater, visual arts. I actually have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in digital art with a classical art training. And I happened to get into being a lawyer because my parents asked me to help them run their business. And I kept saying to them, I'm an artist, not an entrepreneur. I don't know how to run a business. And they're like, oh, we believe you. You can do it. You've been an art director. You can do this stuff. And as I was working for a record label, I was in the music industry. And then I worked for a larger company working with musicians, doing electronic press videos, music videos, website design, all kinds of photography, all of that stuff. So after my parents said, can you please help us? I said, okay, well, then I'm going to learn as much as I can about business and about entrepreneurship as possible. My son was really young, and I looked at this as a fantastic opportunity. And so I started learning a lot about landlord tenant law because they had properties. And I was learning how to negotiate with vendors and how to handle like certain situations. And I was constantly going to the legal library or asking my attorney. I was taking different contracts and putting them all together and then having him review them because I just wanted to make sure that everything was running as seamless as possible for my parents because I was in a completely different industry. And I learned so much about law that there was one day my attorney was telling me, be quiet. You just keep trying to argue. And I'm like, yeah, but this and this and this, and that's not part of the law and all that. And after the hearing, he said, you need to go to law school. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. But if I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to go to represent people like me who are artists and people like my parents who are entrepreneurs. And so that's what I did. And I knew that I had really enjoyed the freedom and the ability to, as an entrepreneur, to kind of craft a business and building together strategies. And so I had always wanted my own law firm. And that's how I started my law firm in 10 years ago. Yeah. And so in the meantime, because I've been studying crystals and meditation, mindfulness, all these other things on the side, I started seeing how there was ways to intertwine entrepreneurship with a holistic perspective. But the kicker was when I got cancer. So in 2015, I was diagnosed with small cell cervical cancer. So I had to shut down my practice. At that point, I had a law partner, and I focused 100% on healing. And I used a lot of these techniques that I had learned, which were crystals, aromatherapy, nutrition, meditation. And I went from like stage 4 to stage 0 in 5 months. And that was a
That's
huge
incredible.
eye opener on how different modalities can be implemented into your life to not only to heal, but to enhance your life to make it better. So when I started back
Right.
becoming a lawyer again, I started interjecting some of these things into my client consultations. Like, because when we're lawyers, we only hear legal stuff for maybe 10% of the time. The rest of the consult is,
Right.
full on. Let me tell me about your business. Tell me about your relationships with your employees, and how are you feeling. What are your strategies for implementing certain things? What is your long-term vision? What are your goals? And I started adding in, well, why don't you try this meditation, or why don't you try this aromatherapy, or why don't you
Mm,
be mindful of this? Then it got to,
I love
hey, I
it.
know a great crystal you can use and a new technique.
Yes.
And I started feeling so much better because I was no
Yeah,
longer hiding a part of myself. I was
exactly.
adding the artistic, creative side, the holistic point of perspective into entrepreneurship. And my clients were being really receptive to it. And it was interesting because I started manifesting more.
That was gonna be my question to you, was how were your clients receiving that information?
They were very receptive. I think it's because I did it gently, and the type of
Yeah,
practice that I have is very collegial. It's not very formal. I always call myself the non
yeah,
scary lawyer because honestly, I want
yeah,
to empower people with education. And the last thing they need is to be afraid of their lawyer.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I told you this before we started recording, but when I saw your bio come across my desk, I was super intrigued because we don't often see, um, people who take these very analytical, structured, formal kind of professions, um, and show that more creative side of themselves. And I believe we all have both sides, right? We have this analytical capability where we can, you know, cross our T's and dot our I's and the black and white rules and all of the things. But I think there's a much more flowy, spiritual side of us all. And I haven't seen somebody do this, such drastically different appearing things into one profession. And so, I just think that's fascinating. And so, yeah, for my first question was kind of like, well, I wonder how people are receiving that. But I think if nothing else, it would make people more curious, and want to have that initial conversation. Wait, how is this lawyer different than all these other scary ones?
Yeah, because you have to take, especially with business law and intellectual property, you have to take into consideration the individuals as business owners because their
Hmm.
business is so tied to them, especially in the beginning. Like sometimes someone's business can be part of their identity instead of understanding that the business is tied like a child to you, but then as it grows, it starts becoming its own entity. And these are the things that I start explaining to people, that when you get too tied to your business, it's difficult to separate yourself from the business and yourself. Like this is the same thing with a job. Like people think, oh, I am XYZ working for XYZ
Right.
company, but then say you get laid off, then all of a sudden they have this full on loss of identity.
Yep. Yeah, we see that a lot. The identity crisis that comes after losing a job because people do tie so much of their identity to their profession.
Yeah. And as entrepreneurs, we have this grand vision a lot of times. When I'm talking to my clients, I want to make this, I want to be doing this type of work that makes an impact and makes a legacy. And as I've interjected more of my holistic perspective. I've been very cognizant of the types of entrepreneurs that I want to. I work with a lot of social enterprises and entrepreneurs who are really caring about their communities and the environment, the world, and empowerment. And so when we're talking about those kind of things, what tools can I give them that I know that I've experienced in my own life that can help them succeed as an entrepreneur and become a better entrepreneur or a better person and enhance their lives, because I see their businesses as something something significant, and I want them to succeed in all ways. And if I have this
Yeah.
nugget of knowledge in my head that I can share with them, I'm going to, because I want to empower people. And that's also the difference. Like when people come and talk to me, I always hear, "You're so unlike any other lawyer." I'm like, yeah, you're not going to see like rows
Yeah.
of books behind me. I'm not going to talk down to you just because you don't know a legal
Yeah.
topic. And instead, I'm going to explain it to you in a way that you can understand, because once you know about trademarks and the power of trademarks, once you know about copyrights and the power of copyrights, or the importance of contracts or these different provisions, nobody can take that away from you. So then when you
Right.
encounter that situation again, you know, oh, I know exactly what to do. I know how to protect myself, or I know that person's trying to rip me off.
Right. Yeah. And I think what you are talking to, this skill set that you have, I've always said to people when I was back in corporate America and like talking to my, skills, I would always tell people that I'm somewhat of a translator, that I would take a complex idea, some technical um, integration. I was working in technology, so we would do, software integrations. And so I would take this real technical process and be able to convert that into layman's terms so that any one of the people, most often it was executives I was speaking to, could understand what we were talking about. And that translation is kind of what you're talking about that you do for your clients, is make this really complex legal understanding and knowledge something that they can not only understand, but then take with them. Like you're giving them that knowledge in a way that they can consume it and also use it moving forward, which is super valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also that empowerment piece and
Yeah,
self-confidence. I've noticed
absolutely.
that whenever entrepreneurs say, "Oh, I got to talk to a lawyer," they get very nervous, and
Yeah.
understandably. uh, and instead, I want to be like their ally. That I'm going to tell you things that you can. It's kind of like teaching people how to fish. I'm not. Sometimes I
Yep.
fish for them, but a lot of times I'll like fish next to them. What I say, fishing next to
Yeah.
them, but then I let them
Yeah.
go fish on their own.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and so when you look at this journey that you have taken and kind of started new things, how do you think you've embraced this idea of starting again?
Well, definitely after the cancer, I feel like a different person. And it's interesting
Hmm.
because my perspective changed a lot with facing death. And if I was given this opportunity to stay alive and be a new person, I'm going to do things that are in accordance with what I want to do and what my beliefs are. And I talk a lot about empowerment because that's really important to me. Like inspiring
Hmm.
people, empowering people, educating people. And if you know anything about human design, that's actually in my human design of what
Oh, what type are you?
oh, I am a manifesting generator.
Yep. So am I.
And but in within my human design is to inspire and educate and empower, and starting again, getting the second lease on life. I'm listening, and I always say listen to your heart song, and my heart song says that I need to be inspiring, I need to be empowering, I need to be educating people, And once I started being honest with myself instead of being two different entities, oh, here's Shannon the lawyer, here's Shannon the crystal healer and energy
Yes.
worker and artist, once I started merging them all together, I said, oh, wait, I know how to do this now. How can I educate and
Yeah.
inspire people, listen to my heart song, and actually do something that is impactful within the world? And this is how I honestly feel like I have been born again, I guess, for lack of a better word, for lack of better
Oh,
words.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, and yeah, I think when we step fully into who we are, human design is an excellent tool to kind of decode what that means. I think it gives us some really tactical, strategic things to look at. I find human design fascinating. Um, I'm also a Manny Gen, and my what is it? My profile? No, there's the profile, and then there's the incarnation cross. That's the
Mm.
one I was thinking of. And mine is all about education. And it took me a little bit to, it took me a little bit to kind of realize how I could use that and what it would look like. Because I think at the end of the day, the way any one of us can live our lives according to our human design, there's so many possibilities, right? You could be a lawyer and have this holistic approach, but you could do half a dozen other things as well and still be fully embodying who you are as a human being. And so I think that's what tends to be a little confusing for people. So I've always known there was an element of I want to teach and help people through education. But, you know, in the early days, I thought that just meant I needed to be a teacher in the traditional sense of the word. Um, and so, you know, obviously it took me till now in my life to realize, oh, wait, I can kind of craft what that looks like and I can do it however I want to do it. And I think that's that empowerment piece that people find when they kind of step into their own power.
I agree. I agree. And I love how human design is similar to like a Rosetta Stone for ourselves. That we
Yes.
know each other, we know ourselves innately, but having that human design at least helped me understand why I do certain things a certain way, and
Yep.
what can I do that will amplify my strengths and to understand myself better. And it's interesting because I've been studying now human design just recently in the past 6 or 7 months. And I've gone down the rabbit hole and I'm like, oh, wait, I love this because I can add this as a tool to help my client consultations. I can use it as a
Yep.
tool to help with when I put together a design. I do intuitive business design, and that incorporates the legal, but it also incorporates the personal aspects, like the long term visions and the aspirations and the dreams. And when I see someone's human design, I'm like, oh, well, let's see, let's use the Heartsong Chakra Framework to put together your
Yep.
business. But how does your human design then relate to your business? And how can we put together a strategy that feels intuitive to you? How can we put together a strategy that
Yep.
will rely on your strengths? That's not only just a legal strategy, but a business strategy.
Totally, totally. Well, and you're doing it in such a beautiful way. I think it's connecting um, their why, which is typically the heart of their business, to the business strategies that are needed to be successful. Yeah, and I don't know that I could say I see anybody else doing it that way. Um, I think I've known and followed quite a few spiritual entrepreneurs, and they kind of do that, uh, but it's not from a legality perspective. It's always more. It's weighted on the spiritual side. It's weighted on the tap into your soul, um, which is important to connect the mind and heart, but I like that your approach feels very balanced. It feels very much incorporating both aspects, but there's a balance to it. It's not one way or the other, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely
Yeah, that's
is a balance because I have
yeah.
seen so many entrepreneurs say, "Oh, I've connected with my guides and I want to do this and I want to have this name." And I'm like, "Okay, let's look it up." Well, somebody else has the name. Well, how
Yeah.
can that be? I'm like, well, because the guides give us all messages, and if you don't act on something, then the same message is going to go to somebody else. So let's take a look at
Yes.
some of the other names and let's reconnect and clarify and find a name that you can use that nobody else has used that you can use as a
I
brand.
love that.
That's actually just a tidbit of how I work with someone, like say if we're looking at trademarks, because that's what I was talking about with
Yeah.
trademarks.
Yeah. And I think most lawyers who are going to be helping someone with a trademark would probably shy away from that conversation if someone came to them and said, "My guides gave me this name."
Oh, absolutely.
Not only do you not even hesitate, but you're like, "Well, okay, yes, of course." And you're not invalidating that that was the message they received or that was the guidance, but you're being able to kind of take that and say, "Well, yeah, 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 but that information is going to a lot of people at the same time, like this collective." This is why I love that you pointed this out, because this is why you can have this hit of intuition and people will think, "Oh, I had this crazy idea." And then the next day you hear a song on the radio that is that very thing. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, because it's the message that's going to the collective. And it's all about who took action on it, who moved forward, trusted themselves and what they heard enough to get there first.
Right.
Not that it's a competition, but with trademarks it is.
Yeah. Yeah. With trademarks, it is, and a lot of times it can be very frustrating, especially for people who are more connected on the spiritual side to actually start doing things more on the business side. Uh,
Oh, sure.
Not everyone is, but I've seen a lot of people who have said, "Oh, I know I need to get this done. I need to get that done." I'm like, well, the reason why you need to get this done, like say if you're a sole prop and then the sole proprietorship, and then I'm suggesting, oh, let's do an LLC. And they're, oh, but that's so expensive. That's, a lot of all this and all that. And I said, okay, well, let's look at it this way. You build this beautiful business. You have this name. Okay, well, now we go to trademark it, or something happens and you're going to get sued. All of a sudden it's you exposed to the world. It's like you going out into a battlefield without any protection whatsoever. Say you're going
Right.
out into a paintball, you're going to want a helmet and you're going to want covers because those paintballs really hurt. And so now you see, if you come out with an LLC, you at least have protections
Right.
instead of being a sole prop. And then I see their eyes light up and say, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "It's not scary. It's not scary. It's
Yeah,
just something different that you just don't understand yet. But let me explain to you why going this way would be beneficial for you and for your business and for your peace of mind."
for sure. That's so valuable. Peace of mind. I think people um they don't give it enough attention.
Yeah, especially when it comes to legal, is they
Yes.
think, "Oh, lawyers, expensive, difficult, complex,
Yes.
aversion." And
Yes.
then we try to sell them like peace of mind, having an ally, getting education, being inspired, being empowered. These
Mhm.
are all things that you get when you come and speak with me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so when you look at your story and kind of how it's the journey that you have taken, I'm sure it was not a straight line journey. Um, what inspires you most about your story?
The fact that I never give up.
Yeah.
Like I literally, I keep saying, like, I was on my deathbed. I looked death in the face and I said, you're getting out of here. I'm not ready to go. And I mean, I just feel like I have so much passion and purpose that I'm taking these different things that happen to me, whether they're just, things that put me down, or I sometimes get frustrated with myself because I feel like I'm not interpreting a situation correctly. And instead, I start changing my mindset and saying, well, what can we learn from this experience? Look at this not as an issue, but as a learning experience. And once I started taking that perspective on things, I realized I wasn't getting as down as I was. But in my heart of hearts, like, I'm never going to give up.
Yeah.
I just, and it's not, and failure to me is not a word. It's just a failure is, maybe it didn't work out in this certain way and what I expected, but I learned something from it, and
Yeah.
it was just a learning experience.
Yeah.
And the only way that I really fail is if I just keel over and say, I'm never doing this again, and giving up completely.
I agree. I think the giving up is the ultimate failure.
Yeah.
But I think you're touching on something that's really important there about these lessons that we learn along the way. If we look at our quote unquote mistakes or failures as just learning opportunities, like you said, there's such wisdom and knowledge that comes from that we can then help other people. It's this ripple effect. But when you look at your journey and you kind of look at all your lessons across the board, what do you think is the common theme for you?
I've always followed my heart.
Mm,
And that's why I tell everybody, listening to your heart song is so important,
yeah.
because your heart song is going to lead you on an adventure. And sometimes you're going to encounter some weird things,
Yeah.
but most of the time you're going to encounter fantastic experiences and opportunities, and live a fuller and richer life.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. That was beautifully said. I think I'm trying to, in my own life, embrace this idea of adventure. I don't think I've grown up feeling very adventurous. Um, but when I think it's all about the story we tell ourselves, right? So if we incorporate new ways to describe those same situations, it feels different. And I think using the word adventure feels more fun and exciting than we're going to have some obstacles along the way. Like, no, it's about having the adventure. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And life is a journey. Like,
Hmm.
people keep wanting to go to the end, go to the end, go to the end. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. Why do you want to go to the end? That's when you
Yeah.
die. You want
Yes.
to enjoy the adventure. And I look at it, at life, as like, as if you're riding along in a boat, or you're riding along in a plane, you're
Yes.
riding, walking along a hiking trail. You're always going to be enjoying the scenery.
Yeah.
And that's what life is. It's a journey. It is an adventure. And
Yeah.
since my cancer, especially, like, I've encountered so many beautiful people and so many wonderful opportunities. And I love seeing how I have grown in the past 7 years, from being extremely weak and couldn't walk or anything, to now I have my law practice, but I have it integrated with my holistic practice, and I'm able to see things from this renewed perspective. And it's kind of neat, because I'll look back, I'm like, wow, look at all the growth I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff along the way, but I couldn't have gotten to where I am right now without that. And what a wonderful adventure and journey it has been.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. People do get in a hurry. They want to get to the finish line or the end of the journey. And I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, but I suspect you are.
Hmm.
They tell this story about, when you go on vacation, you're going to start out at home and you're going to get in a car and you might get on a plane and you might go to this other location where maybe you're going to go on an Alaskan cruise. And then you're going to go on the cruise, then you're going to come back, you're going to get back on the plane, back in your car, and then you end up at home. And they're like, if we're only judging it based on where you end up, well, you end up at home. So why go in the first place? And you're like, well, of course you go on the vacation because it's a fun little adventure and you get to experience new things. And they're like, exactly. That's the whole point, is not the ending point, but the journey along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I started adding one little thing to my daily list. I I when I started seeing a pattern, I said, "Oh, need to keep doing this." I said, "What one thing can I do today that will leave a positive impact?" And it could be something simple like I gave a compliment, and you never know how people are feeling. Like it could be one simple thing like that.
It's
And once
so
I
true.
started seeing that pattern, I started looking forward to be like, oh, how many actual positive, impactful things can I do today?
Love
Like
that.
bring in my neighbor's trash can or something like that. I mean, like just like, and I wish more people would start doing that, just because I think it could be like an entire movement of like, what
Oh,
one
for sure.
positive, impactful thing can I do today that will make my world and somebody else's world better? Because a lot of times we're in this microcosm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually it's very closely related to one of the practice items I give in my courses. So I create online courses and I give these daily practice things. It's basically, here's a thing, a challenge, a new thing for you to go out. It's like homework, but it's a way to practice this thing you've just learned, because implementing is how we actually solidify what we've learned. But I tell people, if you are one of these people like I was, who accepting compliments is difficult, then I challenge them to kind of flip the script and go out and give random compliments to strangers. And when you're seeking out things, especially this is especially challenging if you're like looking for a way to compliment someone that you're not really so fond of, like maybe a difficult coworker or an ex-husband. But when you just drop these little compliments, and you actually watch the person's face and how they receive that, it it does a couple different things. One, it's doing exactly what you just talked about, right? It's this spreading of joy and goodness and passing happiness along and all of that. But I think it also teaches people how to receive compliments as well. So it's kind of both sides of it.
Oh, I love how you do that and you
Yeah.
teach that,
Yeah.
because it's interesting. I naturally do that. If somebody's wearing a nice shirt and I
Yes.
like it and it looks good on them,
Yeah.
I just naturally start saying that. And I think it could be part of my extrovert personality, but I've noticed that a lot. That when people are like, "Oh, random stranger just gave
Yeah.
me a compliment. Thanks. I feel good now."
Yeah, totally. You can see their face light up. And it's easy for me to compliment fashion just because I love clothes. I love fashion. I love shoes, all of it. And so to see the look on someone's face when you've complimented, like they chose that outfit before they left their house, and you never know what that person is experiencing that day. You never know if they just got bad news or if they had an exceptionally hard day with their kids. Like you just don't know how one little positive compliment can just shift the trajectory of the rest of their day. And I love that you seek that out every day. I think I could do that more intentionally, but I do try to do it when I'm out in public. And I know, because a lot of times, here's how it started for me. A lot of times I would notice someone's dress and I would just think, oh, wow, that's a nice dress. And I would just keep it to myself. And I was like, wait, I should just tell her I appreciate her dress. Nice dress. I love that. Those are great shoes. Like just whatever the thing is. And it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there, especially like the fashion one is definitely something really easy.
Mhm.
But then you can even start going into, like, I've seen people handle their kids, have their
Oh, that's a good one.
meltdown in the middle of the grocery store, and
Mhm.
I've watched them handle their kids. And I'm like, wow, you did a really good job right there, mom or
Yeah.
dad, or,
Yeah.
look at you, or look at you rocking your self confidence out there because you decided to go live and you've never gone live
Right.
before on Facebook, or, even, and I've started thinking of like outside the box, like, how can I make a difference in someone's life
Yes.
like
Yeah.
that? And
I love
compliments are
that.
just the easiest thing.
It's the tiptoe into it. It's the easy way to get started. And I think with everything, if we're talking about gratitude or extending compliments, um, you're shifting your paradigm. You're shifting the way you look at the world and how you think about it. And sometimes that shift, the from negative to positive, is the hardest. But once you start the momentum of the positivity, I think it gets easier and easier and easier. So I like to give people those little tiny suggestions that are easy because it starts that shift. It moves their momentum away from negativity and toward positivity. And that's where all the good shit lives, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, because then their perspective will shift. If
Hmm.
they're looking at a certain situation, their perspective, or they might be more mindful of
Yep.
being in the moment and being more grateful, and
Yep.
just changing their vibration
Yeah,
over a period of time, and then which enhances their lives.
for sure. Yes. So I think it's easier for me, this older, wiser version of myself, to kind of know these things. But if we were to like look backwards to the younger me, she didn't know a lot of that stuff. And so if you were to look at the younger you, what advice would you give her?
Oh goodness, because younger me was super optimistic, and then I shut down.
Hmm.
I would tell her it is okay to go within, to rest and go within, and to look at things from multiple perspectives.
That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times I was too much in my emotions. And going back to human design, my authority is an emotional authority. And
Right.
so once I started being more cognizant of like, don't make any major decisions until our emotions like are neutral.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So yeah, I would tell my younger self, go within. It's okay. Let things just kind of calm down and then make decisions. But it's okay to go within, and you don't have to make decisions right away. Be more mindful and look at things from different perspectives, because sometimes you're only looking at something two-dimensionally instead of
Hmm.
three-dimensionally.
Hmm. It's so true. I think that's one of the most empowering mantras that I have learned. Um, and I remind myself of this often, is I'm willing to see things differently, because just our willingness, I think, to shift our perspective is where it's all at. Like, a lot of times it's just the story we're telling ourselves that needs to shift, but we can't do that until we're willing to see it differently. And so, you know, especially when you're making a difficult decision or you're in a challenging situation, I think being willing to see things differently is the baby step. I always say baby steps are better than no steps. Like, instead of being stuck where you are, feels terrible, like, what's the one little tiny thing you can do? You said that earlier, but I actually heard Sandra Yancey say this. She talks. Her mission is helping 1 million women reach $1 million in their business. Like, this is what her whole networking company is built on. And so she said, "What is one thing I can do today to get me closer to my goals?" And it's just like we can get so overwhelmed, I think, with life and challenges, that how do we pull it back, and what's the one thing I can do to get me closer to where I want to be? Which I love how she said that, but I love how you shifted that even a step further, which was, what's the one thing I can do today to have a positive impact? That's much grander in scope. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my ultimate goal is to be one of the people who helps change the vibration of the world.
Yes.
So
No
how
small
can I
feat.
do that? Using my own
Yeah.
human design and my limited capabilities as a human being. Well, I
Yes,
can do it in a variety of ways.
for sure.
I can be a really great lawyer. I can empower my clients. I can give compliments and leave, little traces of positivity within my life. And so that ultimately, by the time it's my time to go, I can look back and say, oh, yeah, I did leave an impact. I
Yeah.
left an impact every day, which
Yeah.
we all do.
Of course.
But what is it that people want to remember us as? And
Yeah.
I obtained that perspective because I was on my deathbed. Because
Right.
which is interesting. I was like, wow, if I died, like, what what would happen? What would be who would be at my funeral? What would people think of me? And I
Hmm.
actually got that information when I was sick. And so now I'm like, okay, well, what can I do to make an even bigger impact in the world
Yeah.
if I touch the lives of these people who are like, oh, I didn't know, because I was a single mom. I went to law school when I was 34 with a young child.
Yeah.
I got my JD, I got my LLM, I survived cancer. I have multiple businesses, and had no idea that my family and my friends were following me along, and my colleagues, my clients, and I was leaving an impact for them.
Absolutely.
And I didn't see it until I was dying. And I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen to other people either. Like,
Yeah.
what I want people to feel like they're living a full and impactful life. And especially as entrepreneurs, because our businesses, our businesses leave an impact and a legacy. And they
Yep.
do help us move forward, and being mindful of who we are, and that legacy that we are leaving can help us live a more full and rich life. Because, like I said, from my previous when we were talking previously, this is a journey,
Hmm.
this is an adventure. We are the heroes of our own stories.
Yeah.
So let's look at the hero's journey
Yeah.
and enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100% agree with everything you just said. So, speaking of this hero's journey, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
Oh, mega publicity.
I love
I
it.
am finally taking those steps to be like, all right, world, here I am.
Here I
I'm no longer
am.
hiding myself. And I've been hiding myself for quite a bit, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of that had to do with overcoming my cancer, but also that split personality.
Yes.
Here I am as a lawyer, here I am as a holistic practitioner and artist, but now it's like, here I am. I'm the Heartsong lawyer. I'm the Heartsong entrepreneur. I'm Shannon, and I am ready to take my message to the world.
I love that. Well, speaking of, how can people find you?
Sure, they can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm Heartsong Lawyer Shannon. On LinkedIn, Shannon Villalba. You can check out my law firm website, Villalba Law Firm. And I have lots of information there about my Heartsong Chakra Framework, which is the framework I developed based on the chakra system that helps people with putting together a legal and business strategy.
I love this so much. I cannot thank you enough for being here today. It was such a pleasure to chat with you, and I just appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Shauna. It's been wonderful chatting with you today as well.
Did you like this episode or did you love it? Inquiring minds want to know. The best way to support this show is to subscribe and leave a review. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.